go all the way back to Korea and then play Overwatch like within days of that.
And now we continue with our new series since Overwatch League is in a drought of games, with good reason. We are continuing Hindsight Is 2020. Last week we looked at the first day of the first week of the first season of the Overwatch League. Today we are looking at the last game, the grand finals of Contenders Korea Season 2, and that was the Kongdoo Panthera versus Runaway. It was a game.
It was a game.
So I
Go ahead.
I guess just some background on why I chose this game. Because one, neither of you have ever watched Contenders. So, I think it's just interesting kind of seeing these players before they've entered the Overwatch League. And I didn't watch Contenders at this time. But I think another really interesting part of this game is it's one of the games that actually has the most history kind of coming into it that we've seen in Overwatch. And it's one of the games that, looking back on it, has a lot of significant history, even looking back to Season 2. So it's just kind of like an interesting point in all of these players' careers, and kind of seeing where they are and where they ended up at the end of Season 2, because there are a lot of parallels in this game to what happened in Season 2 for these exact same teams. So I thought that was just kind of interesting, and it's just like a really good game. Like, it's an 8-map series. There's a lot going on. It's the last. I feel like it's the last kind of really huge Contenders games, because last season was pretty big with like Fusion University popping off and stuff. But and Element Mystic going really good. But I feel like there was a level of excitement for this Kongdoo Panthera and Runaway game that I saw on like Twitter that I haven't seen in a while, and so I feel like this was kind of the last of the really big games, and probably like the last of like Apex being a big part of kind of Overwatch history, because these two teams go back to Apex Season 1, so it's just kind of like a really good, I guess, bow to put on like the Apex era, which we haven't gotten to, but this game kind of represents that in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And like we said, the two teams were the Kongdoo Panthera and Runaway, and Kongdoo Panthera consisted of Ding, Youngjin, Coma, Luffy, Roar, and Decay. And then Runaway was Janu, Bumper, Hacksaw Stitch, Summonsue, Twilight, and Slime, your Vancouver Titans from last season.
Basically, Shanghai Dragons versus Vancouver Titans.
Yeah, essentially.
With some added gladiators in the mix. So, they started on Lijiang Tower, and there was a moment where I saw goats on both ends of the screen, and for a split second I was like, oh god, gag, gross, I haven't seen this in so long. And then I immediately followed that up with watching Bumper die and being like, man, I kind of miss Bumper. I hope he's doing okay. And then there was several times later in the game where I was like, Bumper, if you don't hit something other than a wall with your Fire Strike and yourself when you're charging, I'm going to be very upset, in 2 seconds. I swear to God. It was, as my notes say, it was, goats, jazz hands. Because that's what it was. It was just goats.
It was definitely a goats game. I mean, we saw a lot of the same things we saw. Like, we saw Bumper and Hawksaw set up like a shield bash shatter, which was really cool. I think just an interesting thing is going back and watching this game that Kongdoo immediately just went to like Pharah goats, which is a very Shanghai Dragons thing. But you could tell it wasn't as like sophisticated or I guess as well planned out as it was in Stage 3 of Season 2, which I feel like they really perfected that style. Because in this first map, they kind of got destroyed on the ground. Like, the Vancouver Titans basically ignored Pharah and just killed the rest of the team, and then Ding's Pharah was irrelevant. So this map was kind of an easy win for Runaway at first. And then, you know, Runaway kind of lost it a little bit. At least I feel like, Runaway, I feel like lost some of that aggression early, but then they immediately picked it back up. And despite Roar's incredible shatters during this map, which he had some crazy shatters throughout this entire series, Runaway ended up just taking the map clean. And it really did almost look like just an easy 4-0 at first. Like, Kongdoo didn't look like they had anything for Runaway. The Pharah stuff didn't look like it would work at all. It felt like a map where it's like, oh, okay, the Vancouver Titans are gonna, 4-0 a team. Like, obviously.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was just one of those moments that I was watching this and I was like, oh, I can't believe that I'm gonna sit here and watch this. And then I remembered it was part 1 of 2 parts that I had to watch, and that's when it sat in that I was like, well, hopefully by game 5 something is good's happening, that I'm like still super invested in this. That'll be a secret tool I will use later in a rant. So it was fun to watch, and it was again, I miss Bumper, and I hope whatever he's doing now, he's doing well, whatever it may be, since he's no longer with us anywhere. Hashtag finding Bumper.
There was something that I noticed in between maps 1 and 3, or 1 and 2, that I really enjoyed, where all the teammates and like coaches and the managers would come out to like, where the players are sitting and talk to them directly and do like direct coaching. And I don't know, something about that presentation I really enjoyed, seeing like all the coaches come out and like talk to the players and like figure things out. It really just gave a nice visual to how the teams are adapting mid-game and what the emotions like are in the dugout and stuff, that we don't get now, where they just, go back and then come back out, and you don't get to see kind of the coaching aspect.
Yeah.
But in this, I really enjoyed. You just saw all the players come out. You'd see Hureg like pump up his teammates. You would see Flowervin come out and like, kind of make sure all the players are okay. You would see Kongdoo Panthera try to figure things out. And I just enjoyed seeing the visual of teams working through the struggle of either winning a map or getting clapped really early.
Yeah, no, I also noted that down, but I noted that down later when I was just kind of doing overall notes after the first 4 games, whereas like, oh, we're going to go to a break, so they were just doing a bunch of replays and stuff, so I kind of noted down some of the things I found interesting, and that was definitely something where I was like, oh, you know what, this is actually really nice, because other than when we were watching the All-Star games last year, we didn't really see that kind of like camaraderie from everybody, and I think that's something that is really nice to be able to see outside of just like the Shock winning the playoffs or the Shock winning the championships and everybody coming out, or during an All-Stars game. I think it's very important to see like the interactions between the players that are subbing in for maybe whoever, eventually when we go back to seeing people on stage, being able to have those little moments of like, oh, hey, it's nice seeing, somebody being like, hey, good job, good luck, you got this, like that kind of like sportsmanship that we don't really get to see, where it's just like, okay, now suddenly space is in, or something along those lines.
And so I guess coming off that map, I noticed like Flowervin came out, and it's just like a really interesting story of how Runaway is a team and how successful they've been, because they're basically run by Runner and Flowervin, and they're married, which is, super cute. But Runner basically started the team because he just wanted to play professional Overwatch, and he was already like a popular streamer, so he just said, screw it, I'm just going to start my own team. And so he just started a team on his own and played support for them and entered Apex Season 1. And Hawksall was on that team. Like he's like the OG of OGs on this team, but they ended up doing like pretty bad. Like they weren't that good. They had some like good upset wins, and then the team was kind of down. And so him and Flowervin, his wife, ended up saying, "Screw it, we're gonna like get a team house, and we're gonna figure this thing out." And it paid dividends because they started winning and they started actually playing super well, and they were, started picking up really good players. And then Runner had to go off to military service, so basically this team for like the past couple years has been all Flowervin. And I think she's done, one, everybody respects her that I've seen on Twitter. Like, every person at Overwatch respects her, and she has the pedigree to back that up. Because if you just look at the players of who Runaway has produced, Runaway is probably the most successful competitive Overwatch team organization ever.
For sure.
Just based off like general success, because obviously they send all their players to the Overwatch League, and the entire team gets bought by the Vancouver Titans. And then last year's Runaway roster ended up producing a bunch of Overwatch League players again. Hisu, Lee Jae-gong, Gangnam Jin, Shui, Yaki are all in the Overwatch League, and they came from Runaway. And even this year's Runaway squad, they signed Flower, so if they end up turning Flower into a valuable asset, that's just going to look even better on the organization. And they have a lot of players on the team that I really wouldn't be surprised if just end up in the Overwatch League, because Runaway is such a well-run organization. And I think it's just cool looking at, when you hear Wolf and Achilleos cast this game, they have a real good understanding of the history of Runaway and how good of an organization Runaway is. And I don't know, I really enjoy that. I like stable organizations, especially in contenders, where so many Overwatch League teams are dropping their contenders roster. I think Atlanta Academy isn't playing games anymore, so it's good to see that there are some organizations in contenders that are strong and kind of fostering like the next generation of talent, that it's super important. And so it's just really cool seeing like Flowervin come out and talk with all the players, and she's super invested in the entire squad, and you could tell they really play hard for her, and she's a strong motivating force. So I don't know, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So we go to
sorry, the next map was Eichenwald, and I have to tell you, I was not expecting to see Runaway playing Winston Hammond, Tracer Farah, Zen, Ana, and Panthera comes out. They're playing Hog, Zarya, Ryan, Farah, Mercy, Zen, which is more of a like, okay, that's understandable. That's on Eichenwald. You're trying to do the Farah thing, the Far Mercy thing, and you're getting kind of lucky. But it was just, I had a lot of questions, because then later, which we'll see, they start running this Hammond thing a lot more with Runaway, and it actually works for them. And I don't know where things switched. Maybe it was putting Bumper on Zarya. We'll never know. But it's just, it was just so interesting. And there was just seemed to be like a lack of awareness from Panthera when they were going through like a lot of the first part, and then Runaway, just per usual, I think had better ult management, but overall it still came down to just like, I felt like, and I said this a lot of times, where it was like, there's just these real lucky kind of kills that they're getting, and I don't like, it was the kind of luck that you see now, and you're like, oh, it was a general mistake, but it's like literally so many times I was just sitting there and I was like, oh, you got the luckiest. You got the luckiest kill on a like Zarya, or you got the luckiest kill on something, and it's just like, that doesn't make sense, and you shouldn't have gotten it, but you still did, and then that's how you win the team fights. And I don't think that screams anything more of than like Shanghai Dragons when they did get through the playoffs. And this is like two totally different teams. Like, it's Runaway, it's the Vancouver Titans that are doing this, but that was such a Shanghai Dragons kind of play set through the playoffs, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. And so
100%.
this this map was probably the start of everything getting like super weird and crazy between both of the teams, where nobody could kill anybody, and it was super scrappy. So Koma switches to Widow and kills Hoxel, which is like another just... First we see these comps, and then Koma goes on Widow and kills Hoxel, and it's just like, what is going on right now? Kongdoo Panthera takes 2 ticks, but then Runaway brings back the defense, which is the story of this game, almost capturing the point and then getting screwed over. Bumper dies.
Per usual.
Ding outplays Hoxel on Pharah, which is an obvious move. Kongdoo Panthera ends up taking the first point. But this is kind of where everything switches, where Stitch ends up switching to Widow, and the Kongdoo Panthera doesn't have any answer for it.
Yeah.
Stitch is taking these like super aggressive pine flanks and is just deleting the entire team. And this was one of the maps where I asked myself, like, oh yeah, Stitch is really good. You know, he was forgotten last season because Sominsu ended up being such a great Zarya, and it was all goats at that time. And then when it switched to stage 4, it was Reaper, and so Stitch didn't have a place. But watching this game, Stitch really carried this team in this map and through kind of the early portions of this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Stitch is a forgotten player on this stacked team, and you know, I wonder if in the coming weeks we're going to see a lot more Stitch and kind of get to see how good he is, because he really turned everything around for this team. At least, you know, I thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, so
Then
after
with the,
just a bunch of... Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
So I guess after a bunch of fighting, Kongdoo Panthera goes to counterpicks and finishes the point. And another kind of observation I had was that Youngjin's Roadhog, which we all know Youngjin is a really good Roadhog, but it was just cool to kind of see in this game he switches to Roadhog, and it was like, oh yeah, it was still really good. Like, he was hella clean on Roadhog. And they end up capping all 3 points. And then there's another weird switch that happens, which I think this map was really fun because of all the counterpicking. But Runaway just went full goats on attack and destroyed Kongdoo Panthera.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very Vancouver Titans style game where they just pressed W and went forward, and there's nothing Kongdoo could do.
Yeah, no, for sure. There was, I think it was the second run through, where it was just like the overtime on cart, but Kongdoo still like capped the point, and then, you know, Roar did his shatter like through the first little choke where the gate is, and it was like really nice. And then they had almost made it all the way to the door going into point C, like the end of point B, right over the bridge. And it was that moment where they were doing a really hard like hold, because like because Runaway had a lot of time to like try and do this when Kongdoo Panthera was just doing this hold, and there was this moment where they were coming underneath the choke trying to get to the point. Runaway was coming through the choke trying to get to the point, and I just see Ding right above in the air as Pharah, and I'm like, please don't. You know the stage 3 playoffs in Shanghai, you know, Ding does that thing that Ding does as Pharah, and then he does it, and you're like, wow, I can't believe Ding has been getting away with this for this long. And then, like, the true last second, they get the, Runaway breaks onto the point, and then they don't do anything once they get onto the point because they don't have anything to kind of go back against Panthera. And I just thought it was, like, one of those moments where I was sitting there and I was like, oh, yes, Ding on Pharah, doing the Ding thing on Pharah that the Vancouver Titans couldn't handle when Ding was on Pharah. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this is where the Ding Pharah stuff like actually ended up working. I guess another weird thing was just seeing Ding like kind of end up on Diva, It was just
Yeah, that
oh
was
no,
great.
it was just so strange. But obviously, the way the roster is constructed, um, Ding just kind of had to end up on Diva. Like that's just kind of how the team ended up working. Um, but so Runaway finishes the map with 5 minutes left on the time bank, and Kongdoo Panthera only had 1 second left, so they only got a minute to complete this. Kongdoo Panthera takes point A really quickly, and as you said, they just couldn't handle anything. Roar hits another gigantic shatter, like one of 20 huge shatters he had this game, and they end up pushing
Roar
it
was playing what we
near the
like to call
bridge.
the best video games of his life.
He was, dude. He was going so hard. And so they push it through overtime, and they stop it like right before point B, like right at the very end of the bridge. So Runaway has a lot of ground to cover, but yet again, they have 5 minutes. So how can they screw this up? And they almost screw this up. So Runaway's on offense, and they just can't attack. It feels like they're thinking too much and they're playing too passive. And Kongdoo Panthera is just destroying them at every single fight. Just giant shatters, giant barrages, winning fights without ults. Runaway just looks like they have no idea what to do, and Kongdoo Panthera is looking like they're going to just easily take this map. So it's 20 seconds left. We're in the desperation stage. We have Sombra delay the point, and everything opens up. Bumper comes in, hits a huge shatter, and they take point A. It's overtime, and Ding has barrage. So, you know what happens.
Yes.
Ding hits Q and just wins.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I was just like, oh, I can't believe Ding's about to get away with this. And I'm witnessing it for the first time in forever. And another thing I wanted to point out, since we're getting to the end of this map, and obviously Kongdoo Panthera win map 2, they win Eichenwald, and I like to think that every fan favorite team in Contenders will eventually end up in as an Overwatch League starting roster. At least one time every year when they are adding a new team, there's going to be one team they just pluck completely from Contenders and just throw in, because it's what has happened with Seoul Dynasty, it's what happened with Vancouver Titans, it's what will inevitably happen with whichever team comes next, and I won't be surprised if it's Runaway again. But also, it was at this point where we're kind of moving into that third game, the Temple of Anubis, and I thought there was something very interesting while watching this game, was the crowd, and this is the thing where it comes in, where it's American sports versus other countries, how very respectful the crowd was, and how they only really chanted when they were told to chant at the very start of each side of the team. And I thought it was very interesting, and the crowd was mostly women. A majority was women, and I'll talk about this more later, because I think the camera shot of Sominsu's family and his parents is more important later when they're closer to winning the match, and she's almost in tears, his mom, I'm assuming, where she's almost in tears up in the stands, and his dad's freaking out, and I think that's going to be the moment where I bring that up. But I thought that was adorable, but it's just very interesting how different the crowd's reaction was, or how they edited in crowd reaction, because I'm sure it wasn't completely silent. Somebody had to make noise, but it just seemed so quiet watching the matches.
I mean, they didn't really mic the crowd super well. But you could really hear the crowd in some of the more tense moments. But I mean, they definitely didn't mic the crowd super well. But I mean, yeah, it's just how it be. But it is really interesting that the entire crowd was basically women, and you do see that in Korea a lot more than out here, especially even in, I guess, just in a lot of kind of sports that happen in Asian countries, because in pro wrestling, I mean, New Japan Pro Wrestling, a lot of their crowd is women. It's not just all dudes or young guys. So looking at this game, it was interesting to see the crowd so full of women, and it was really cool to see just to see a crowd in general It looked like a pretty big venue, and it seemed like a really good atmosphere. So I thought that was really cool. Uh, so yeah, we're tied up 1-1. Someone sprayed an SF shock spray on Eichenwald in that like
Oh,
last bit. I think it was Roar. Yeah,
I didn't even
and it was
see
just like
that.
another weird. Yeah, it was another weird parallel where it's like, wait a minute, who has an SF shock skin? Why are you spraying it? And are you from the future? Like, do you know something that
Yeah,
like we
okay,
don't know
no,
right now?
I think one of the funny moments was, I don't know what, I think the cat, Wolf or Achilles, one of them said, I don't know what coach whispered in the Runaways' ears to get them to go out there and do this, and I was like, oh, he whispered that they're going to be the Vancouver Titans for sure. They whispered that, like, that had to be what it is. You know, they're moving up, so they got to make it big now to go into the actual league big. And I was just like, that's just like something that was in the back of my head that I thought of. But yeah, again, Temple of Anubis, whoever is winning the season's apparent worst map of all time.
Yeah, Temple of Anubis is just the map where everybody ties on. Like, it always happens. Temple of Anubis is so hard to, like, not screw up. Which is really strange.
Yeah, no, it's like, I wonder how many draws in the Overwatch League happen on just Anubis alone.
It's really funny the Temple of Anubis is such this, like, strange, almost cursed map when it's, like, the first map they designed for the game.
It's cursed because it is.
It's cursed because it is.
Yeah. But, so this is the one where Somansu kind of just takes over for the rest of the game, kind of. And it was a very fast cap for a Runaway on point A. Like, don't get me wrong, but it was the moment where it's like, you know, they're running Genji. Both teams running Genji. And Haxel's blade was so bad. And Decay's blades were so good. I started doubting that Haxel was the best Genji in the Overwatch League. Because I started sitting there and I was watching this and I was like, you know, I kind of need to go back and watch a few more of Haxel's games where he plays Genji to see if he actually truly is as good as a Genji as these casters were making out when we were watching him in the Overwatch League. Because for all I know, it was that one game on Temple of Anubis when Haxel actually played Genji again, and that's all we know. Because this game, it was just rough blades all around for Haxel.
Yeah, he ended up picking it up a little later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in this game, he had really good blades and then really bad blades. Decay, they basically just traded back and forth of, like, who had the bigger blade.
Mm-hmm.
So, Haxel gets a blade. He goes 1v6. And Runaway can't finish the fight. And that was the story of this entire map. Runaway would almost do something, and they couldn't finish the fight. And then Kongdoo Panthera would almost do something, and then they couldn't finish the fight. And that was this whole game. Like, the enemy teams were just able to stall, and point A was taken easily every time, right? But it was point B that no team could really get an actual advantage. It was just constantly like these super long fights, and it's not like they were even playing goats like that. And so it wasn't just the fact that there was so much healing or whatever. It was just that nobody could kill anybody. And when you did kill somebody, it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Wolf who said, like, Haxel doesn't see the bigger picture sometimes. And you could really see it in this fight where Haxel would just be, like, chasing opportunities, but he couldn't really kind of tell what the team needed as a whole to finish these fights.
Yeah, I have a note
because
that says it was really weird watching because the first two maps it seemed like Runaway was so methodical and was so like concise and prepared for what they were going to go in with, and then suddenly in this map it just like all went to shit. And it's just like, well, what happened here? What changed in between Eichenwald and Anubis? And it literally was like, will Runaway be able to take this point B, with 54 seconds left after them capturing point A so quickly? I mean, they did in overtime, but it was still like, will they actually be able to do this? Or is this just another situation where we're like, really? really? You know?
Yeah. So we go into overtime. Kongdoo barely takes it, and then Runaway holds on defense by winning like a team fight. And we're tied 1-1 still.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, yet again on Temple Anubis, no team can like come out on top, and it's just excruciatingly close. And this is kind of where I feel like Kongdoo Panthera started feeling confident about their ability to kind of win this game. Because after this, they started playing a lot more decisive. And I feel like these next 2 maps that we talk about, it was even like these next 3 maps, it felt like Runaway was looking for how to deal with things. And they felt like they were playing tentative and not in that typical overly aggressive style. And that just allowed Ding to just run wild on everybody. So we kind of end up on map 4, which is Watchpoint Gibraltar. It's not like the crazy, like, I think this is probably the worst map out of all of them.
Yeah, so
it's just pretty simple, like,
yeah, no, I think Watchpoint Gibraltar is where I kind of lost like my patience with watching the games, because I was like, I can't believe there's another hour of this. Like, you expect me to watch 3 more hours, like, I know who comes out on top. You expect me to watch 3 hours worth of this game where all the matches are just Runaway trying to figure out how to deal with something. I can only watch Bumper be clapped by Ding so many times and not think, there's that Bumper feeding mentality that comes into play every single time. Because he did. Because for some reason, he kept letting the Hanzo shoot him as Winston without putting down a bubble.
I mean, this was the quintessential Bumper game. Because he had like the game-winning play. Yeah. But he also did just a bunch of stupid things. And this was the quintessential Bumper game. And it really shows, I think, what he brought to this team is just like this crazy playmaking. And in the clutch, he's really good. But in those moments where, you're just kind of in the middle map where it's, the pressure's not too on, Bumper's going to kind of screw up a lot. And on this map, it was just kind of a pedestrian performance. So Runaway kind of goes Doomfist Widow. Stitch comes back in, and I don't know, it was cool kind of seeing the Doomfist, and interestingly, you can see the evolution of how good Doomfists are, because if you compare this Doomfist to Hydration's Doomfist on the first day of Overwatch League, it's completely different. Yeah. Like, you're starting to see some of the more acrobatic movements and cool things going on, but basically this map just kind of came down to Ding just killed everybody. Ding was on Hanzo, and he got huge Dragon Strikes and pretty much stalled Runaway at point C. And Kongdoo Panthera came through, and Ding, and their attack run was just Decay. Decay came through and just clapped the rest of the team, and Runaway it felt like they were tired this map and didn't really try their best, and Kongdoo Panthera kind of smelled blood in the water.
Mm-hmm. I do have that. During this like whole thing, I was like, Kongdoo Panthera is like holding really well, but it had gotten to the point where I was like, somehow Runaway will, and I can't stress this enough, get the luckiest pick. And then an example literally fell on my into my hand when they killed Roar, and then Coma was rezzing Decay, and it's just like shit like that. Or Haxel getting the 2K as Fist, just, Runaway Titan things. It's just like that kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, they should not have gotten that easy, like they shouldn't have gotten that advantage, and yet they did, and that's where you could kind of see Bumper getting the life back into him, Haxel getting the life back into him, because it was like at that point where it was like, there's a huge difference between like this Runaway team and then Overwatch League's Titans. And just playstyle, Bumper could still be aggressive, but there wasn't the team to back up when either Bumper or Haxel wanted to be aggressive, and we saw that on Anubis. They wanted to get in there and they wanted to do their thing, but they just didn't have the support to come up behind them or everybody moving as a complete unit. I believe there was like a point where the casters said something where it's like Kongdoo Panthera is working as a Fist, while Runaway is working as six different fingers, obviously, because there's 6 people, but, like, they're not working together in the same manner as you would hope they would for a team who, went 16-4 during that season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that map was pretty kind of close, and it was the impetus to lead us into map 5, which was Oasis, and it was just another Kongdoo Panthera map, like
yeah, so
where Pharah was just unstoppable, and Runaway couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
Oh yeah, that's just kind of it. I mean, Runaway just couldn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't really good performance. They did look good on the first point. If I think it was Lighthouse, or no, not Lighthouse. That's not Oasis. That's Ilios. That's later. But either way, on the first point of this map, they looked bad until they flipped it at 99%, and then
yeah,
managed to win this first point. But it was just a typical Runaway performance this game where they suck and then they somehow drag it out. But it didn't really last the rest of this map because the next 2 points they just got 100 zeroed.
Okay.
And had nothing for Kongdoo. I
do think that there's, like, absolutely no follow-up on this map from either side again. Just, like, Kongdoo Panthera just had the, like, the spirit to go on. And there was moments where, like, I'm watching some of the team picks, like, the comps that they're trying to run, and I'm just like, you know what? I kind of blame Contenders for all the silver players that I see in the world, because some of these, and we'll talk about, I think, some of the things that I saw almost be run on Route 66, where I'm like, what are y'all doing? Don't even dare walk out this door trying to run this comp. But it was definitely around these 2 games where I started thinking, like, it just started to drag on way too much, and it was because, like, no one was really finishing fights. So it just got to the point where it's like, just kill something already. Just use your ults wisely, because there would be times where it's like the Shatter would not connect with anybody, and then, it wasn't even like the Grav wasn't connecting with anybody. Like, the Grav wasn't even connecting with anybody, but it wasn't because Janu ate it. It was because the Grav's not connecting with anybody. And it was just, like, at that point where I was just like, please, I can't, if there is another hour of this, please, for the love of God, make it more interesting than what we have been having to watch now. Not to mention, like, the fact that Runaway didn't even try and touch the point in the end. That was rough. It was just...
Yeah, they got, like, hard full held.
Yeah.
And this is where, I like, even watching this, if I watched this live, I would probably think Kongdoo is going to end up winning this game. Just because it felt like Runaway didn't really have a plan for anything. And things started to turn around for them going into map 6 on King's Row.
King's Row.
Where they bust out that crazy-ass Bumper on Zarya, Janu on Ball, Genji Sombra composition. And it totally worked.
It was so interesting, because, like, after the break, I totally made a note that they do look strong. And there was the most relatable quote I had listened to in the entire broadcast, which was, they absolutely clapped Kongdoo. And I was like, you know what? That is probably the most relatable quote I have heard all day, because, yeah, they really did. And this is when they were showing Su's, like, family in the audience and stuff, and it totally reminded me of when we would when the crowds were allowed at sumo wrestling that we would watch, and it's just, like, all the sumo mom and dads, they were there to support their kids, and they would just pan to them in the audience, and they would just be like, yeah, that's my boy. And I'm like, it had such that same vibe, and I was like, God, now I wish that we had gotten to see the Chinese and, like, Korean games, because, like, whole families would have been there for that.
Oh yeah, no, it would have been such a vibe. This comp was carried hard by Janu, though.
Oh,
Bumper was
for sure
okay on. Bumper was about, like, the level of Zarya as, like, what KSF played Zarya mostly last season, but he was, like, on that level
Something
where he
like
was just like a good, serviceable Zarya. But this entire composition was carried by Janu, who was the MVP of this particular map because his ball was just so disruptive and really allowed the Genji Sombra thing to work. And Bumper was just kind of there. And he was cool. Like, you know, he wasn't awful, but he wasn't as good as he usually is on, like, a Ryan or a Winston, where he actually makes an impact.
Yeah.
But yeah, this map was definitely just all about Janu on ball.
Yeah, no, there was a moment where they talked about how there could be a nano blade, and I was like, an EMP nano blade? Are we seriously going to hit a triple? And then I remembered that, like, and it was at that point that Bumper got his Graviton Surge, and I was like, or heaven forbid, a quad? Like, use all of your ults, because that just sounded like something that would happen with Haxel, and then they ended up not doing a nano blade, and Haxel, I think, like, died really quickly. And I was like, well, there goes Haxel, and he used his blade, but no nano boost, so I guess that's not happening, and EMP also wasn't used, so I don't know. Here's one of those Haxel blades that we were talking about before already.
Yeah, and I think...
no, Janu
yeah.
totally, like, the difference between, like, I think it was when he was hiding just up above point C, like the very end stretch after you pass a little, like, barrier where he was hiding up in that corner, and he, like, like, came down and, like, completely wiped them out. I was like, oh, so we're actually playing Wrecking Ball right now. And then I don't remember who it was. It might have been Bumper. It might have been somebody else, but I have in all caps, by God, he got the pick on Roar. And I don't remember what that was, but I think it was like the game-ending pick that they needed. And I was like, this is probably, thank God, finally picking up to something where I'm like, after those games where it's just like, nobody's killing anybody, nobody's doing anything, finally we're seeing something. And it's the comp that they kind of came in with, but actually working. And I don't know who's the genius behind this, but, like, they need a handshake for sure.
So now we go into map 7, which is Dorado. And this is put up or shut up time for Runaway, right? So Runaway needs to come through right now. You know, this is time. You know, like, you got to take this map. So Bumper is back on Zarya, which is like, all right, fine. This comp, you guys really like it. They get destroyed and pushed all the way to point C. Runaway says, all right, forget all the BS. We're going goats. And they do really well. But Decay, yet again, carries his team, and they finish the map.
Yeah.
So Runaway
can I take it back a second? At the beginning of this this map, I wrote down, okay, so Runaway's on defense. They're doing the Zarya, Hammond, Sombra, Genji, Mercy, Ana thing again. Good for them. And then up in the little, you know, like, hero select screen, I was like, yes, what I call silver excellence to Nathan. The Zarya, Genji, Doomfist, Widow, Hanzo, Zen pick. You know, as one does for Panthera, which they, you know, eventually changed to the Winston, Genji, Brig, Widow, Hanzo, Zen thing, and then again changed up afterwards. But it was just like, yeah, sure, run that. The Zarya, Genji, Doomfist, Widow, Hanzo, Zen pick.
Yeah, that was one of those comps where it's like, I don't want to see anybody trying that in one of my games, because this only works if you're a professional team. Like, this isn't something...
Yeah, I was like...
This isn't something you can do anywhere else.
Oh, yes, that fabulous main tank Zarya coming in clutch with the shielding, and that, so good healing from Zenyatta. Like,
but,
okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, they ended up going back to goats when things got tight. So, Runaway needs to complete this map or they lose. So it's time to go hard. They finish the map, and so they keep the dream alive, and now they have to play some hard defense. And this is where Runaway, I think, excels, and where I think the Vancouver Titans, as an extension, excel, because they excel when a lot of pressure is put on them. Barring the grand finals against the Shock, but the Shock were just way better. They excel in these moments where there's a lot of pressure on them, and there was a lot of pressure all of last season for them to succeed, and they ended up rising to the occasion. So they pretty much full hold Kongdoo Panthera
Yeah.
on defense.
Yeah.
And so all they had to do was just barely push the payload, and yet again, Bumper saves the team with a gigantic shatter, and they end up winning the map. So they force a map 8. They force a final map.
Okay, I think what the most amazing part of this, like, this push after the full hold was, like, Bumper hits a shatter. It doesn't do too much, and then Bumper hits the amazing shatter, and they're, like, you just hear Achilles and Wolf go fucking nuts, because they're like, oh, he hit 2. I can't believe he hit 2.
Yeah, like, where'd he get that shatter from?
Yeah, like, it was as if, you know, Echo was in the game or something. I don't know. But it was at this point where I was like, okay, cool. I'm finally invested again into this, like, storyline that's going on. And, I mean, again, I know the outcome, but it's also just one of those moments where, oh, finally, this team that I actually enjoyed watching in Overwatch League is finally looking like how they should be looking against the Shanghai Dragons. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So now we're going into map 8. So this is, just to kind of put into some context, especially for, I guess, just anybody in life right now. The Shanghai Dragons went to a map 8 in the Overwatch League as well this past season against the London Spitfire.
Mm-hmm.
And during this game, they talked all about this game, as this was the second time they ended up in a map 8. This was, you know, just the feelings of getting clapped by Runaway in a map 8 and how they're going to react to playing against the London Spitfire. So this was just, I feel like, the perfect game to go back to, because it really does tell the Shanghai Dragons story, because even the players that ended up on the Shanghai Dragons this season, it's not like they came in on a high note. It's not like they came in as these victorious, you know, winners.
Mm-hmm.
They came into the Shanghai Dragons off of a
crushing defeat.
soul-crushing defeat,
Mm-hmm.
and they came into a losing organization and a losing team and lost their first couple games and weren't that good the rest of the season. So the fact that they ended up making playoffs and went to a map 8 and had another heartbreaking loss is just a very nice bow to wrap on this, like, Kongdoo Panthera squad story, because now this season it's not necessarily the same kind of team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now we have a lot more new players. This isn't really, you know, Youngjin is gone. This isn't the Kongdoo Panthera squad anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's really poetic how, you know, they start kind of this early stages of a really strong run, losing a map 8, and then kind of finish it with another map 8 in a high pressure situation. So we go to the final map.
We're on Lighthouse first, and both teams are running goats. And I have to say that when Kongdoo Panthera take the Lighthouse, the point, there was a holy crap shatter and then a holy crap Graviton Surge, where they just basically team wiped Runaway twice before, you know, Runaway even take control of the map, which was at like 94% for the Kongdoo Panthera. And then basically what saved them is Koma's unrealistic environmental kills on not only like this map but also on Well when we come to it, because he didn't boop off Bumper not once but twice when Bumper almost made it to the point to like stall. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, like, talk about an aggressive Lucio. I haven't seen.
Yeah, Koma was a playmaker this game for sure. Kongdoo Panthera won that first part easy.
Yeah.
Right? They pretty much took Lighthouse, got 94%. Runaway kind of stormed back, but Roar was so big. Roar was so big at this time, where he just kept hitting like these gigantic shatters. It was obviously Roar. Dramatic. Yeah, and obviously Roar, you know, he had another gigantic shatter for the Washington Justice a couple weeks back in the Overwatch League. And I think Roar is a player that I definitely overlooked in Season 2, where
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
I don't know. I don't think the Gladiators really gave him a real good shine. I think the same was with Void as well. Everybody talks about how insane Void was, but Void didn't really show that much for me just because I'm very low on the Gladiators as a squad last season. So looking at Roar now and just seeing how confident he was playing and how big of a playmaker he was, it was really impressive because he just kept hitting big shatter after big shatter, and Bumper was looking like he was getting played out. So then we go to Well, and Runaway needs to win this point. So Runaway goes with Genji Tracer dive.
Oh my god!
And then immediately run back to point and go goats.
Oh my god, that was the funniest thing. They see the goats coming and they're like, "Hold up, let me backpedal real quick." Maybe Genji Tracer dive wasn't the best choice.
Yeah, so the MVP of this map was the Well itself.
Yeah, because
Slime gets the first kill off Youngjin, boops him. Runaway takes the point. Bumper hits a Roar Shatter effectively, where he's like, Bumper was so out of position, and he was just like deep in the enemy backline. He just pressed Q and said, somehow this is going to work, and it ended up working. So Bumper hits this giant Shatter. It's looking like Runaway's going to dominate. So Runaway has one win condition. They need to stop the grab and the shatter of Kongdoo Panthera. Bumper dies. He gets booped. And then the shatter comes in. Roar goes crazy. They take control. Bumper dies again. Coma is just
so much Bumper
feeding
death.
the Well.
So much. When they say like, I think it was Wolf and Achilleos. Whenever they see Ilios, they're like, the Well is hungry, you must sacrifice to the Well. I'm pretty sure it's this game that they're talking about, where it's like, you must feed the Well, sacrifice all to the Well. Because,
yeah,
god
it was crazy.
Damn. Everything
So,
went in
despite
the well.
all the sacrifices, the Dow Jones still didn't go up, and Kongdoo Panthera is 10% away from winning the map. Runaway ends up flipping the point. They have 28% to force match point. Slime is a magician. He somehow survives with like 2 HP left. He keeps the team alive. Runaway steals the point. The crowd is going insane as they force a match point. And Wolf and Achilleos are going crazy. They're losing their voice. They're just screaming out of their minds of excitement. I mean, these two dudes...
Excited. They're so excited about the, 1-to-1 match that even the production shoots off the streamers too early.
Oh, everybody was just clenched.
The dude with the camera in, the third row back was like, wait, what? And he stood up, and then he sat back down, and he was like, wait, the game's not over yet. There was so many things where I was just like... There was a shot to the Sominsu's mom and, dad in the crowd, and she's, crying... And they haven't even won yet, but she's crying, and I'm like, I feel you, Mom, I feel you.
Yeah, it was intense. So, before we go to map 5, I just want to throw some shine on the boys Wolf and Achilleos real quick, because they made this map 8...
bearable?
Incredible. And they made it epic. Their casting
because of them, yeah.
is some of the best that Overwatch has, because, one, I feel like they're just fans first.
Oh yeah,
and they get hyped. They get hyped with you, and sometimes they just lose control. And they know
when a game is running good, and you could feel because I mentioned I was like, the casters at this point where it was just like nobody's getting kills, everything's just kind of dragging on. That even they themselves, and maybe they shouldn't do this as casters, but in contenders, I feel like it's a little bit more like, it's okay. But it did feel like even during those moments where I was just kind of sitting and I'm like, come on, guys, you got to put something into your casting right now, because if I'm feeling it and that I'm feeling that you're feeling it, then it's not really good for me as a viewer watching, because I'm also getting really bored that nothing actually interesting is happening, because it's not like I don't play Overwatch. I know when I game it, and it's not like I haven't been watching Overwatch League and professional Overwatch for so long now that it's like I know when a game is going actually good and when a game is not going actually good. So it's at the point where I'm kind of like, ugh, when things aren't going good and the casters aren't helping things along.
But these two really kept the game kind of going because even in like the mid rounds, like on Temple of Anubis, they did such a good job of setting up the importance of everything. Like they would be like, Haxel needs to hit this blade right now, and they're just as excited about what's going to happen next as we are. And so it's almost like we went on this journey with them because by this map 8, Wolf and Achilleos are losing their voices. They're just yelling. They're just like so excited, and it's just so good to have. And they're probably one of the best casting teams in terms of like conveying emotion. I think Uber and Mr. X are really good at just like as a duo and kind of being
bouncing off
like
each
the
other,
big game announcers. But Wolf and Achilleos do such a good job at like capturing these big moments and just losing their minds. Obviously, I guess the biggest example is when Shanghai got their first win, and Wolf and Achilleos are just like screaming their heads off.
Not only are
like
they screaming
losing their minds over
they're
it.
screaming their heads off, but also it's these guys that they just watched have this moment.
I think that's powerful is that they understand. I think more than every caster, I feel like they understand and can really do a good job of putting everything into context and really setting things up. And obviously, like, it was a big joke last season where it's like, oh, here goes Wolf and Achilleos talking about Apex again. But I really value that because it gives a sense of history and it tells that they follow these characters' careers. And for any new viewer or even us who didn't watch Apex, it's really good to hear them talk about like a Vancouver Titans and really be able to put in perspective like, no, this is a team that has been together for 3 years. This isn't just some random team. Like they've been together for so long and they've gone through things. So now that they're seeing all the success in the Overwatch League, it's the conclusion of a big journey. It's not like they just suddenly came in and were good. This is a journey for them.
I definitely think that we witness a lot of people who like we talked about how important it is for the players like Jake and people who have left and becoming casters and like desk analysts and stuff, how important it is to keep them around for the history. And looking at these hindsight games, especially from like doing day one and then going into doing this game, where it's like there is so much more history to Overwatch League than we're actually contemplating about. And when we do eventually do our hindsight 2020 for an Apex game, I do think it'll be at like those moments where it's like now we kind of appreciate Jae Hong for who he was and Jonak for who he was and all these other players, looking at them from a broader sense than just herp derp, they're in the league now,
Yeah. So now we go to Ruins.
Hold on. Como, for the 13th time of the 13th time, has the boop for days in this match.
Yeah, he goes hard. Como goes hard, but Bumper just opens up the game and goes Bumper. Like, he just says fuck it and just walks forward into the team and just nobody's gonna kill him. Like, this is where you want Bumper. This is where you want him on your team.
This was the map where I think Bumper and Haxel are on that little ridge facing towards where Panthera will be coming from, and they're standing right side by side. And it was right before Bumper hit this huge shatter, which Coma then boops him out of the way, of ramming through. But it's right there at that moment where everything clicked, and I'm like, it's the Titans. This is the Titans right now. This is what they are, and this is what they brought into. This attitude right here is what they brought into the league. And that's why they got as far as they did. And it wasn't until Shock literally clocked them for their shit. Which, mind you, when I was very upset that I was watching a 3-hour-long game, basically, that I went and I looked at some of I was like, I wonder what the shortest game in Overwatch is. And I think the 31 minutes that it took for Shock to beat Vancouver in Stage 2 playoffs is pretty impressive.
Yeah, pretty close. I think I think the shortest game, I'll have to look, but I'm pretty sure it's some of those Boston games this season were pretty short. I wonder if those like Boston got kind of destroyed some of those games.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I think it was against New York. They got like ran over.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I had to sit deeper with, but when I ran into like the Shock Stage 2 playoffs, I was like, wow, that was pretty short. Can't believe that. But again,
Yeah. But either way, like Bumper, this is Bumper's map, and this is where you want him on your team, where he's a playmaker, and he's going to just like he's going to commit, and you have no choice but to commit with him.
yeah.
And so he forces the action. Like he hits a bunch of giant shatters, and Kongdoo Panthera just doesn't know what to
They
do.
choked.
And you really can.
They choked.
No, you can tell they choked because they wasted a bad self-destruct, and Decay wasted a grab.
Yeah.
And in a map 8, the final point, you can't waste an ult, because if you waste an ult and lose that fight, you're giving up like 15% or 20%. So
This was so much.
you're giving up a lot.
This was so much where, you know, we saw Titans on their downfall when Havana came in and on with the Spark, where Spark should have won. That choke was this like Kongdoo Panthera choke.
Yes,
Like,
for sure.
It was. It's not that like I mean, you know, Titans was on their down swing then when against the Spark, but it was like one of those moments where it's like you guys had everything you needed to win this match, at least get onto the point, and y'all literally choked so
Right.
hard, and
So
it was great.
Bumper hits Bumper hits a giant shatter on Coma. They kill Roar. Decay gets melted, and Runaway ends up winning the game in map 8, dominant last 2 points, and they win the Contenders Championship. And the crowd is going as crazy as I've ever seen a crowd in Overwatch go. All the fans are in tears. Like, you have people just, like, not even crying. You have people sobbing. Like, so
Oh yeah,
happy and so you know, all this tension that built up through these 8 maps, and if you're in there as a Runaway fan, like it's just like this constant, like it's just a stressful game.
oh yeah, no,
And
for sure.
they won, and all the fans are in tears, and it was
No,
just like
everybody
this
was crying.
huge moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some like last minute notes because I had to point out like it was again basically me watching where it was like the most exhausting points of the game, and then them pushing through that and like, you know, getting that like adrenaline of like, let's get this done, let's do this, let's win this, let's go, you know, from the from Runaway. I was like, this game had to be exhausting, and like there was just the crowd was crying, staff was crying, players were crying, you could see players in the background crying, and I wanted to point out that like basically all of Runaway was crying, which is like the Vancouver Titans, and yet it's such a thing to point out that like only an American like group of fans watching would point out when was it Jaehong cried last season, that they would be like, why are you showing this? Like, don't do this. Like, it's not right. It's not, don't like do this to like like blah blah blah. And I was like, you have to understand, like, thinking of that Jaehong game, that was also like a fucking exhausting match for them. Mm-hmm. And like they have all the rights to be like emotional about that, because I believe Seoul lost that game, but they were putting everything they had into it, and it gets to a certain point where it's like when the Shanghai Dragons won, where it's like it gets to a point where, you know, after so many times and different cultures and different ways of being like, hey, I'm so sorry to my fans, like I generally think that like Jaehong felt like he let down every single fan, like for the last time as a Seoul Dynasty player. You know, it was like that was his game. He should have won it, and he felt like he was letting down everybody. And same way with this game, where it was like exhausting, but they they had the entire crowd, like basically the entire crowd behind them, and just the emotional relief, all of them together collectively must have been like the most amazing vibe check I would have ever witnessed on camera.
Yeah, it was I don't know, man. This game was probably like, it was totally worth rewatching or
Oh, yeah.
you know, watching. And I think it was just one of those games where I feel like it's an Overwatch game at its peak. And what I mean by that is it's back and forth. It has all the history and emotion and whatever to it. But if you just look like purely at the gameplay, I think there's a lot of really smart counterpicking. There's a lot of, like big plays and smart strategies. And I think this game is where GOATS probably should have been at. And I think if GOATS stayed at this level, we wouldn't be locked in 2-2-2 right now. Because obviously, after this game and leading into Stage 2, or Season 2, GOATS became every single game, every point, no matter what, you ran GOATS.
You had to play.
And that became a problem. But in this game, GOATS was situational. Like, these teams didn't just only play... Obviously, in Map 8, when things got super tight, they played GOATS. But yet again, this entire game was meaningful. And so there were maps where they would try out Genji, they would try out Doomfist, they would try out Widow. And every single time they deviated from GOATS, it was a situational thing. And GOATS ended up being situational. Like on Eichenwald, they only really went GOATS like to take the third point because it's close quarters. And GOATS excels in that environment.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed GOATS during this game because it was a big part, but it was just one part of like a grander strategy and a grander like just a grander tapestry of Overwatch, right?
Yeah. There's this...
And eventually it became the entire thing.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish up.
No, you're good.
Okay. There's this theory where it's like collectively people who go through changes in something have like different emotions. Like a lot of people going through this like lockdowns and like all these are going to be like, what the hell is human touch after this? But it was one of those moments where I was watching this game and I saw GOATS and then I would see people switch off of GOATS and just have this like open reign of playing whatever hero they wanted. And for a second I was like, what are they playing? What is this game? Like, it was a split second where I was like, I can't believe the game ever allowed somebody to just have this like freedom to switch to a support when they needed to. Like, it was just one of those moments where I was like, I can't believe that I can only play this now in like an arcade game mode on this game, or somebody's custom game. Like, it was so weird to see that, and it's just as weird going into like a competitive game going from like a casual game where it's the 2-2 lock to like the competitive game, and then it's like also I don't get to play some certain heroes. Like, there's so many things that have come in because of the Overwatch League. And I don't know if it's like, it does balance out the game in like some aspects, but it's also, there's other times where I'm like, this game really has just like the league has really taken over how the game is shaped. And I wish that they kind of had done that sooner with the game, following things that like in Apex where they could have changed things. Or it's like, it's weird to see that the development of the game has also gone with the way their esports has gone and how they're kind of evolving together. And that's going to be interesting when we go into like Overwatch 2 and how it's going to change everybody's playing of the game also.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that was Kongdoo Panthera versus Runaway. Probably one of, I guess, the most significant matches. It was effectively Shanghai Dragons versus Vancouver Titans. And so eventually when we look back at, Shanghai's playoff run, which I definitely think deserves like kind of another look back, I'm sure we're going to be talking about this game a lot too, because there are a lot of parallels that happen. And I just think I think it's cool that these were, at the time, the only two organizations that were in Season 1 of Apex and that made it to, played in Contenders. So there's a lot of history in this game. Yeah, it was like a really exciting game. Definitely worth a watch. And it's just cool seeing every single one of these players made an impact in the Overwatch League. This was very much like a damn like college all-star game or something. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is like
for
seeing
sure.
the best
Yes, it
college
was.
players before they made it to the league. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I want to remind you that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ScrapyardMedia. Of course, catch us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Hope you've been enjoying Hindsight 2020. Stay safe. The world could always use more heroes. Why don't you be one? Roll outro.